Right, so welcome to our Urine My Data webinar, where we will be presenting findings from our past few years of our Urine My Garden education program, including our community science survey, which many of you, many folks from around the world have taken. And just to introduce myself, I'm Julia Kavicki. I'm Rich Earth Institute's education director. And hopefully joining us shortly is Tatiana Schreiber, who is our social research director and co-designer of this survey and education program. We'd also like to give a special thank you to our interns, Avery and Jessica, who helped with some of the data analysis of this survey. So just a brief overview of the Rich Earth Institute. If you're not familiar with us already, we are a research and demonstration nonprofit dedicated to building a world with clean water and fertile soil, achieved by reclaiming the nutrients from our bodies in a life-sustaining cycle. And we do this through research, education, and technological development to advance the use of human waste as a resource, completing that food nutrient cycle. So our flagship program and kind of the core of a lot of the work that we do is our demonstration urine nutrient reclamation program, which we have a kind of pilot of here in Brattleboro, where we reclaim about 12,000 gallons of urine annually from our community and provide it to local farms as a fertilizer. And we do this to create a local sustainable source of fertilizer for those farms, to prevent nutrient pollution, and to conserve water, which many of you, I'm sure if you're here today, already know. So just sort of a brief note on urine as a fertilizer, which many gardeners may have already experienced, where we're not just reclaiming urine on a community scale, but it's also something that gardeners anywhere can do themselves. So urine has an NPK analysis, just like any other fertilizer might, which we have done based on urine collected from our community scale program. So the NPK is about 0.6, 0.1, 0.2, and it also has a wide range of these other micronutrients. So the rest of this presentation will be delving into some of the experiences and trends and insights from folks who've been experimenting with using urine as a fertilizer in their own home gardens. So our home garden education program kind of has four main components, and the overarching goal of this program is to amplify home gardeners as agents of change through science-based guidance and storytelling. So we sort of have this theory of change where we want to inspire more large-scale peecycling initiatives to get going across the country, like what we have in Brattleboro, or different kinds of programs. And we think that the more that people can try this out at home in their own gardens, the more we can kind of uplift this culture of practice around reclaiming our waste as a resource and provide people with the tools to start doing it themselves without needing to wait for a larger scale program or larger infrastructural change to happen. So we have webinars that we offer, like this one. We have an introductory Urine My Garden webinar that teaches gardeners the why and how of how to use your urine as a fertilizer. We have a guide that includes a lot of that practical guidance as well, which you can find on our website if you haven't already. And we have this peecycling kit that we disseminate through Etsy, and then also through some grant funding to a few specific watersheds that I'll mention next. And then, of course, we have our community science program, our survey, and a few other new features to that I'll be sharing. So the core kind of goals of our community science program are really sort of fit into three categories. One is documenting what's happening already. We know that there are home gardeners around the world who are using urine as a fertilizer, and we want to learn from what they've already learned, what some of you might have already learned. And part of this documentation is also to help quantify the nutrients that we're diverting from watersheds experiencing nutrient pollution, to sort of demonstrate the potential impact that urine diversion can have on supporting watersheds. And also to facilitate home garden experiments. If folks want to set up controlled experiments in their own backyard, comparing urine fertilizer to other amendments, we want to be able to support that. That's not something we're fully doing yet with this program, but sort of a future goal of ours. Second category of goals is around sharing gardener experiences to help uplift communication about a practice often done in secrecy, and also to seed cultures of practice to eventually potentially grow into community scale hubs or kind of larger infrastructural change. And then the third is to just learn about urine fertilization at the home garden scale. While there's been a lot of research around the world on the agricultural applications of urine as a fertilizer and kind of growing fields of research around that, there's not as much done around the home use of urine fertilizer. There is a similar citizen science program that some colleagues in Germany have started around urine fertilizer, but actually in Germany, it's not legal to use your own urine as a fertilizer in your backyard the way it is in the US. So they've had to use special urine or synthetic urine in different cases created by a partner program. But anyway, back to the goals. Another part of learning about urine fertilization is to help gather further questions and insights to inform our future agricultural and social research. So we really appreciate the feedback and questions people give us because it helps us then inform further research we can do to help answer those questions. So we kind of are, in addition to our home garden education for the general public that we provide, we're also kind of targeting specific focus on watersheds that are experiencing nutrient pollution to help plant that seed of urine diversion as a strategy for mitigating that pollution. So one watershed we focused on is the Lake Champlain Basin with funding from the Lake Champlain Basin program. We've been partnering with a lot of organizations up there to help teach gardeners how to do this themselves. And we have grant funding for helping disseminate peecycling kits in that watershed, along with the Long Island Sound watershed, which is the watershed we're a part of here in Brattleboro, and also reaching folks further down in the watershed to help spread that idea about peecycling as a watershed nutrient pollution mitigation strategy. And then we've also been partnering with a lot of organizations in Cape Cod who've really been taking the lead in bringing some larger scale urine reclamation infrastructure to play. So we've really kind of been playing a supporting role for them, including the Green Center, NASDC, and the Falmouth Pond Coalition. I see Carol's question in the chat about it's legal to use your urine in your own backyard. So I think this may be up to some amount of deliberation by what your local agencies say, but at least in our case in Vermont, our regulators have said that if you're collecting urine in storage containers of 5 gallons or smaller, it's okay to use those nutrients however you wish. And if you're not selling the produce, that's another kind of key decision-making point about legality. If you're not selling the produce, but using it for your own consumption, it's kind of outside the jurisdiction of regulators. So one other component of our home garden education of who we're trying to reach is youth in schools. So for many years, we've had a partnership with the Putney School who runs this P Lab for their freshman class, where they teach their freshman class how to, or they help their freshmen design experiments to compare urine and other amendments. And we provide them pasteurized urine for that. And I'll share a little more about our future aspirations in this realm at the end of the presentation. So to delve into our community science survey, a little about the history. We launched it in 2021. And for the first 2 years, it was more of an in an exploratory stage where we had a lot of open-ended questions where people could write more sort of long form responses. And that helped us then kind of hone in on what were some of the different categories that people were we created categories based on the responses we got in that exploratory stage. And then that informed the second iteration of our survey, which is a little more quantitative and a little easier to analyze, but based on that preliminary round of the survey. And we also have 2 exciting new add-ons to the survey that I'll be sharing at the end, including a printable log sheet that you can use to track your fertilizations throughout the growing season, and also a story collector. Our survey has 4 main components: collection methods, fertilization, personal experiences, and then some demographic questions. So we've had, this is a map of all of the survey participants. We had 143 participants in both the first and second round. Just a quick note on combining the data. We had an intern of ours sort of take the exploratory stage data, Avery, thank you, Avery, and input it into the second round survey so that we could analyze all of the data together, sort of fitting the long form responses into the categories we created based on those responses. So we primarily have a concentration of participants in the US, but I think this demonstrates how the practice of using urine as a fertilizer is one that's done around the world. And we know through some historical documentation that this is a practice that many communities have been doing for centuries. So we hope to, in the future, increase our international reach of the survey, especially to learn about how urine as a fertilizer works in different climates. But this is the spectrum we have so far. So a little bit about who our survey participants were. For age, you can see it's interesting that there's sort of a majority in the older age range, but definitely a spectrum there. We also have participants from a range of different locations as far as urban to rural goes, and that might kind of correlate with some of the latter questions we'll be delving into later. There's also an interesting mix of garden sizes, but probably a majority of participants had a medium-sized kind of small homestead style garden that they were fertilizing in. So this is the total, the range of total gallons collected and used as a fertilizer from our garden participants. Put together, all of these home gardeners, kind of as a collective unit, were able to reclaim about 5,160 gallons of urine in an average growing season to use to fertilize their crops. So I think it's pretty cool to see, you know, even if you're using a small amount in your garden, we can see that as part of this kind of larger collective impact we can be having on growing more food with our bodily nutrients. A lot of folks are collecting in a smaller sort of range. We have some guidance in our guide about how much urine is typically needed to fertilize how much garden, where it's about 3.5 to 5.5 gallons should be adequate for a 10-foot by 10-foot, 100 square foot garden space. So that's one way to kind of get a sense of how much urine is needed to fertilize how much garden space. But we were surprised to see that there are a lot of not insignificant number of gardeners who are collecting really large amounts of urine to fertilize their crops and their fruit trees and whatnot. There were some folks collecting around 200 to 300 gallons in a year, which is pretty impressive. For collection methods, there's a wide range of ways that folks are collecting their urine. A few kind of more frequent ones that we heard, in addition to a lot of these different types of bottles, in particular kitty litter containers and wide mouth laundry bottles were surprisingly popular, but also just peeing directly into a compost pile is quite a common practice, and one that Rich Earth, well, not exactly that, but Rich Earth has researched combining urine fertilizer and compost. And essentially the guidance around that is if you have a high carbon content compost heap, then it can retain the nutrients in your urine. And if you have a high nitrogen content compost heap, then a lot of the nutrients in the urine will leach through. So that's something to keep in mind. Another one we've been hearing more of is having buckets filled with biochar and then peeing into those buckets or adding urine to those buckets. And then the biochar can absorb the nutrients in the urine, and it is sort of a less odorful experience. So that's another interesting collection method. And then we have our peecycling kit down here in the corner. One practice that I thought was interesting that a survey participant shared was peeing into your container until it's partially full and then bringing it out into the garden. So it's a lighter weight thing to carry, and then directly diluting your urine. If you're planning on diluting your urine before you fertilize, diluting in your collection container. And that can help reduce some of the sedimentation that can build up on containers before you, and then you can pour it into a watering can after that. This is the range of crops participants fertilized. We had, quite a broad spectrum. We created these different categories to try to help capture the wide range of different crops we received from participants in our exploratory stage. So you can see the nightshade family, which includes tomatoes and eggplants and peppers, was a very popular family to urine fertilize. Other heavy feeders that folks submitted were leafy greens, also squash and other cucurbits were quite common. And then, yeah, you can see just really the broad spectrum of things folks are fertilizing. It's interesting to note that some participants are fertilizing only ornamentals or grass or lawn. It's kind of a good kind of entry ramp to maybe exploring fertilizing other things, fertilizing non-consumables. And then in the other category, some interesting responses included folks fertilizing their houseplants with urine, or fertilizing deciduous trees, and then also fertilizing pasture land. Someone said they fertilized land that their sheep then go to graze, and that their sheep do quite like it, which is a question we've had raised in the past in our research about whether urine fertilization changes the palatability of pasture. So at least from this participant, it seems to be not an issue. As far as timing for urine fertilization goes, there's, again, quite a spectrum. I think we might want to refine this question a little more, because there were just so many different responses and factors that people were listing in the other category. So we might kind of expand the range of options to accommodate that. A lot of folks are fertilizing based on observations of their plant development and growth, which makes a lot of sense. If the plants look like they're growing a little more slowly or have yellowy leaves, or as this participant said, just generally look a little sad and like they might need a boost. Others fertilize more based on the timing of their collection, and just if their jug is full, then they're fine somewhere to fertilize with it. And then others kind of regularly adding to the compost, or just fertilizing directly, body to garden when they're out in the garden.
Julia, I'm here now.
Yay! Welcome back, Tatiana.
I had a my power went off.
I thought it might be that.
And, internet went out and everything, and I had to rush down to our local library.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm at the library where there's power. So anyway.
Which for our participants, I will note, is has a urine diverting toilet that Richard has installed in that library. So
oh, right. So I'm at the library where there is a urine diverting toilet.
Great.
So, and
hey, so glad you're back. I was just starting to delve into some of the meat of the survey questions, but I can pass it back to you now if you'd like to.
Yeah, I can jump back in. So sorry about that. So in terms of dilution, people are utilizing a wide range of dilution ratios, including no dilution. And so you can see, in this graph, the largest number of people are doing, or a lot of people are doing 1-to-1 dilution. And we found that you can use urine undiluted as long as it's applied to moist ground, or right after, before or after rain. So possibly people have learned that or heard that, and they're considering diluting less than they had been in the past, because in the past we got 3-to-1 as being the most common. So that's just something that you can try, maybe diluting less. As far as the no dilution, as you can see here, some of the no dilution is during irrigation or when the soil is wet, and some is applying to dry soil. And we don't recommend applying on dry soil if that can be avoided, because the urine might not infiltrate right away and the nitrogen could be lost to the atmosphere. So next. Yeah, and so people are also mixing their urine with a lot of other amendments for a range of reasons that you can see here. And it makes a lot of sense to mix urine with these other things, because urine alone doesn't build soil organic matter, but combined with other substances, it can be a valuable soil amendment. So people are using urine with their compost, with biochar, with straw bales, and with wood chips. And also with waste wool, urine charged wool pellets has been done, and with animal manures and other things. And some of the observations that people have seen are really interesting. People are observing good plant growth and yield, and there's some interesting observations about reductions in pest pressure and disease, which some people are attributing to generally healthier plants and soil, because they're getting more fertilization. Some people are seeing evidence of improved soil life, But of course, that could be due to other things. In addition to the urine, it could be due to the other amendments that they're adding. So currently, the survey doesn't really document people who are doing experiments with urine as compared to a control, where they use their usual fertilizer or no fertilizer. So we may adjust the survey in the future so that we can document any specific experiments that people are doing like that. And in terms of yield, probably the most significant thing here is that no one reported a decreased yield or growth, which is good. And but of course, again, it's hard to assess without a control, because of course, if you weren't fertilizing very much before and then you fertilize with urine, you're going to see increased yield. So it's another reason we'd encourage people to do experiments, do controlled experiments.
These are just some pictures. We have an option to submit a picture of your garden or your collection method. So these are just a few pictures from survey participants of crops they were urine fertilizing in their gardens. We have a pepper plant, some habaneros. That one's actually from Richard's demonstration garden. And then we have some bananas here. This participant said that their banana yield increased a lot thanks to the urine fertilization. Here we have a few sort of experiment type or comparison type things that participants did. This one demonstrating rhubarb, that only the right rhubarb plant was, or a bunch of rhubarb plants were urine fertilized in this stage. So you can see it's a little lighter green and a little yellowy on the non-fertilized side. And then they did fertilize both, and you can see that the non-fertilized plants kind of caught up a little bit once they were fertilized. And then on the right, we have some urine fertilized strips of grass that are a little darker. You can kind of make that out in that picture. Here are some urine fertilized flowers that folks submitted. The photo on the left is from Mass TC, where our collaborator Amy did some trials with cosmos that she urine fertilized. And then these are just a few more pictures of folks' gardens that they shared of their urine fertilized gardens. So this is a question we have around whether folks are replacing their use of commercial fertilizers with using urine, which is helpful, especially when thinking about the net watershed impact of if you're actually helping to reduce the nutrients that are being imported into the watershed through your use of urine. So a lot of folks had never used commercial fertilizers before, so they didn't have anything to replace. Either they had always been urine fertilizing or always just using locally available amendments. Or there are folks who use urine in addition to other amendments that they're buying, but using them in combination. And then there's the group of folks who have fully replaced their use of commercial fertilizers with urine fertilizer. And then a secondary group being folks who have replaced some of the conventional or commercial amendments that they buy, but still use urine in conjunction with some other amendments. And this might include folks who are, for example, using like compost or other amendments with urine, but reducing some amount of maybe the commercial fertilizers they're buying. And this next slide just shows some examples of amendments that folks said they are buying less of now that they're using urine fertilizer, including things like Miracle Grow that you might have to buy at a garden store. So hopefully maybe also having a cost saving benefit of having this free fertilizer you can now use. And a quote from one participant just saying that we use a lot less commercial fertilizer than we used to after using urine fertilizer.
And there are a lot of, there are many reasons that motivate people to do this. And some of the most common reasons are to conserve water, to reclaim nutrients, or to prevent pollution from nutrients getting into waterways. But there are a number of other reasons that you can see here, such as accelerating the composting process. So again, it might be useful for us to analyze this further to see which reasons are most significant to most people, thinking about correlating to where people are. The reasons might be different in different regions, urban versus rural, or by age. people of different generations might do it for different reasons, which would be interesting to see, or other factors. So we hope to look at some of that going forward.
Another question we have in our survey is whether or not folks feel comfortable talking about their urine fertilization practices with others. It's kind of an interesting spectrum that folks often end up falling on, from preferring to keep it quiet and not tell anyone, to folks who might tell some people, maybe close friends or family, to folks on the kind of very open end of the spectrum who are really eager to tell anyone who will listen and share what they're doing. So just a few sample quotations from this spectrum. Folks on the far left who prefer to keep it quiet. You might live in a homeowners association, for example. So this participant says they keep it quiet and apply at night with a watering can. Another respondent said that people already know that they do things differently and don't want to isolate themselves, and so don't share with folks who aren't kind of in their quote unquote tribe. And then folks in the middle, I think there's a few different elements at play here. There are folks who, don't necessarily want to have this conversation with everyone, but as this participant shared, if you think about other amendments that are used to grow your food, like chicken manure or dead fish or things like that, and actually learn a little more about the ecology behind those amendments, then actually using urine as a fertilizer might not seem so strange. And then I think there are a fair amount of folks who, there have been a few big national news media articles that have come out about peecycling, including the New York Times article that this respondent mentions, as well as the CBS video, CBS Sunday Morning, that came out about peecycling and Rich Earth's work. And I think those have helped to sort of embolden people to come out in the open and about a practice that they've been doing in secrecy, and kind of start talking about it with others once they see it in that national spotlight. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's a lot of responses about just the dramatic effect that urine fertilizer has on your garden, and then that inspiring people to talk to others about it because they have this, amazingly abundant garden and they want to share with others, how they got it to be that way.
Yeah, go ahead. I just got to say, it's really exciting to see the kinds of words that people use when they're asked for 2 words to describe their experience. It's just something we have on the survey, and people just say you have to come up with, really distill it to what it means to them. And so these are just some of the words that people have said.
Yeah.
And then one of our questions on the survey was, has your relationship to your garden, food, body, or the environment changed as a result of your use of urine fertilizer? And I just thought it was very interesting that almost 70% of people who answered that question said yes. And so do you have some of the reasons on there? Yes.
Yeah.
Great. These are some of the reasons. Yeah. It just feels like such an important part of right relationship, increased awareness of self. There's something special about understanding that yellow miracle flows from my body every day. I pay more attention to changes in my urine, which could indicate a change in my hydration status or other health conditions. Including humans in ecological cycles. I find it very comforting to be part of a circular closed loop system by which nutrients I take into my body can be returned to the soil, which continues to produce incredible nutrient-dense plants for me to eat. Becoming conscious of their impact on the watershed, I feel like I'm contributing to a broad effort to reduce sewage flow and water usage, maintain soil health, restore natural balance, and locally handle local waste. And then broadening perspectives. I have so much appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things. So it is very interesting that, that doing this practice and becoming familiar with it can have such a profound effect for many people. And then we're finding overall 2 main trends in the kinds of experience that people are having, the kind of transformations that they're going through. One is that those who've been using urine for many years are reaffirming their understanding about ecological cycles, and gaining new enthusiasm for further experimentation. And then people for whom this is new are having kind of a light bulb moment where they're realizing the potential that using urine as fertilizer gives them a renewed sense of connection to nature. And there's a lot of excitement and curiosity to learn more. And then we're also asked about people also describe some other ways that they're using urine in addition to fertilization. They're finding a lot of other beneficial uses, such as reducing insect damage. One person felt that using urine fertilizer early helped their eggplant to outgrow the most damaging period for flea beetle damage. And so they had less flea beetle problems. Others are using it to deter other pests like woodchucks. And one person found urine to be effective at reducing Japanese knotweed stands. And so they reported all of their experiments with that to us, but more data is needed on that. So.
Just a few kind of frequently asked questions that we've noted throughout our both the webinars that I run and also that respondents submitted to the survey. One is around the impact of pH on garden or soil health. Another is the impact of the salt content of urine on home garden soil. And this is something that there's a little bit of research around, especially in generally noting the dynamic of if you're somewhere where the irrigation or precipitation rate is greater than the sort of transpiration rate, basically the salt will wash out of the soil and not accumulate and not be a problem. But in arid climates, or if you're growing in a hoop house, there is some potential for salt accumulation. And so more research around that and strategies to mitigate it. For example, flushing with irrigation water to wash the accumulated salts out of the soil is needed. And then there's a lot of questions around sort of the intersection of reclamation and contamination, where, when we live in a landscape where there are so many contaminants or different compounds that come from the environment or from medicines we're taking and flow through our bodies, then that raises questions around what to do with those contaminants in our human waste when we're trying to reclaim it to fertilize our crops. So some common concerns are pharmaceutical compounds, which Richard has done research on with UMichigan. If you go to our research results page, you can find the results on that. Basically, we found that the compounds don't seem to be accumulating in crop tissue at high levels, but that they're present at sort of barely detectable levels. You'd have to eat a pound of urine fertilized lettuce every day for 1,000 years to get back the same amount of caffeine that's in a cup of coffee as sort of a worst case scenario. But we share more about that in our Urine My Garden webinar. So if you come to one of those, we can delve into that. Other contaminants folks are concerned with include hormones, chemotherapy medication, or folks undergoing radiation treatment, which on a community level or on a large scale, I think gets diluted enough that it's not a major concern, but on your home garden scale, you might not want to use that urine to fertilize your crops. And I think often, sometimes doctors might recommend, if you're undergoing that treatment, to actually collect your urine and not put it down the toilet and contribute it to your municipal wastewater supply and do something else with it. So we would recommend following that similar guidance for not using it as a urine fertilizer. And then PFAS, which is a rising area of concern and something that we've started testing our own community scale urine for, and the portable toilet company Wasted up in Burlington has as well. And essentially what we're finding is that it's not, it's only present in urine as sort of like an indicator of its presence in our bodies, but sort of at very low levels, but something we're continuing to look into. And then questions around regulation are quite common as well. And kind of clarifying the distinction between what's allowed at home garden scales versus farm scales. So 2 new add-ons to this. So I guess that kind of concludes our sort of main analysis component of the survey. But since we have time, I just wanted to give you, Tatiana, a moment if you wanted to say anything more about the slides I went over before you joined. I could just hop back to them quickly. Yeah, like particularly this slide, I was thinking you might have.
Yeah, maybe just on the crops. Thank you. Let's see, what was I going to say about crops? just on the crops that people are fertilizing with, I'm not sure, you probably already said this, but they're mostly using urine on crops that have high nitrogen needs, such as these Solanaceae crops, the tomatoes and things like that. But people are also using it on a wide range of other crops, as you can see, and they're often experiencing very positive results. And some of that is unexpected, like the root vegetables. 7.5% of people are using it on root vegetables, which I wouldn't have necessarily anticipated, because you don't think of root vegetables as being having high nitrogen needs. So it's interesting, but urine is a complete fertilizer with secondary nutrients like calcium, magnesium, sulfur, and a lot of micronutrients. So it might be, helping things in ways that we're not really completely aware of at this point. There's some crops that we don't exactly know how to categorize, such as asparagus and rhubarb. But those seem to be crops that people are finding it very helpful with. So we need to continue to gather more information, and we hope to expand our community science work to gather more information about the best uses for the specific crops. So that'd be a really helpful information for us to have.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Dr.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will hop us back now to new components of our community science.
And that's why this new component, the log sheet, could be very helpful.
Yeah, excellent transition. Thank you.
Yes.
So we have a new log sheet that we've created that we're inviting folks to use to track both how much urine you're actually using throughout the growing season, and also what crops you're fertilizing and any responses you're noticing with them. So this log sheet is available on our website. I can also send it out to all of you who registered. Essentially, it includes rows for each date that you fertilize. And we encourage you to make a separate row for each different crop that you fertilize, so that you can differentiate the crop responses to the urine that you're using to fertilize. And also can track information like how much urine you're using for how much garden area, or what square footage of that crop did you fertilize, and also what dilution ratio did you use, and what other amendments did you use. So hopefully this can help kind of track a little more about observations related to those different methods that you're using, and hopefully be a tool for you to learn more about what seems to be working for different crops as well. So we encourage folks who do use this log sheet to, at the end of the growing season, when it's complete, when you take our Urine My Garden survey, there's now a place where you can upload a picture or a scan of your completed log sheet for us to have. The other new component that we have that's also linked in the full survey as an option, a new add-on, is this story collector feature, inspired by some conversations we were having with Gadakana, which is a local kind of indigenous family support and seed saving organization. They do a lot of different things. But just thinking more about the importance of storytelling and sharing people's experiences and some of the nuances in narrative and emotions and your motivations and inspirations for doing this practice. So we have this open-ended format where you can tell your story however you would like. If you want to make art or an illustration of your garden and your peecycling setup, if you want to make a short video or a zine, or just write down a short story about why you started, or memories as a child of your grandparents urine fertilizing, this is the space to kind of share more in depth those experiences. So we hope maybe some of you might be inspired to share a story, or maybe share this option with others. And we hope once we have a few responses to this, to start making an online gallery of people's different Urine My Garden stories, to kind of start helping get some of those stories out there and inspire others to share as well. A few sort of other future project goals, things we hope to add on to this program in the future, or increase about this program. One is increasing the global reach of the survey. We want to help get folks from more different countries being able to take the survey and share their experiences, especially to help think about some of those questions around how different climates might impact urine fertilization methods and responses, and also how different cultures might impact how people feel and talk about using urine as a fertilizer. To help support this goal, it would be amazing if we could start making the survey available in different languages so it's more accessible to folks. Another idea that we've had sort of as an expansion of the log into the future is if we were able to create a platform to actually have gardeners be able to create a profile for their garden where you can track kind of year after year what crops you're fertilizing with how much urine, and kind of add updates throughout the growing season in a digital format that might be easier to kind of add on to year after year and analyze the data from. Another thing we'd like to be able to support more, as Tatiana was mentioning, is adding more opportunities and supporting gardeners with protocols for doing controlled garden experiments to compare urine fertilizer to controls and really learn more about the impact on yield and all those other factors that we were talking about. And we kind of, in an ongoing way, are trying to use the survey data to inform our other future research questions, agricultural research, social research, kind of learning what we're learning from all of you to inform the other research that we're doing. Another sort of program goal of ours is to share some of this curriculum, for example, what the Putney School P Lab has been doing with other schools that might have school gardens, so that they can help the students kind of start doing this experimentation and learning about using urine as a fertilizer in that school supported context. And then finally, we're really eager to hear your thoughts about what we should do with this program. If you have suggestions of where we should go next, or things we might add on to our community science program, we would love to hear them. And then just sort of a few kind of bigger picture questions that emerged from us from going through all of this data. One is just sort of continuing to think about that question of contamination and reclamation, of how we foster shared understandings of how to eat and where to excrete in a world that we've inherited with all of these contaminants. And so thinking about what are useful communication strategies to help people kind of think through this question themselves, and what tools can be useful to have conversations around kind of dealing with this situation where we want to be able to reclaim our waste while also trying to be cognizant of not adding further contaminants to our soil. Another sort of ongoing question and research area for us is continuing to research different application methods and urine fertilization practices for different crops. And this is something we've been starting to do in the past couple of years more in our agricultural research. And we just had a webinar sharing some of our on-farm research findings about that. So if you go to our YouTube page, you can find the recording of that webinar. But we're also eager to continue to learn more about the home garden context and how different application methods might work for different crops at that scale. And then finally, learning about the impact of urine fertilization and methods for different climates and ecosystems, especially as we start to learn more from gardeners in different regions around the world. And then a few questions for you to kind of close off our presentation section of this webinar, and maybe invite us into some discussion together if you would like. And then we'd also, love to hear any questions or ideas that you have. But yeah, we would love to hear what you would like to see us do with our home garden education and community science program. If there are new features we should be adding, or new guidance that would be useful, we would love to hear your thoughts on that. What questions you think we should explore with this community science survey or our research. And then finally, if there are other suggestions of how to kind of expand the reach of our program and help us reach more different diverse audiences and folks in different geographies, or folks from different backgrounds or sectors, I'd love to hear your suggestions about that as well. So with that, I will bring us back all together, and would love to hear, your thoughts or questions or responses to these questions.